The planet was quiet, too quiet for a world that once held more than 20,000 alien families. Dust floated through the air like grey snow. Burned metal and broken glass covered the streets. The sky was dark with smoke, and the wind carried the smell of old fire. Sergeant Mason walked slowly through the ruins, holding his rifle close. His boots crunched on pieces of destroyed homes. He had seen wars before, but something here felt different. Something here felt wrong. Mason's mission was simple: search the colony for survivors. But he knew the truth. No human rescue team expected to find anyone alive on this broken world. The colony had already been listed as lost. Yet Command had ordered one final sweep before they left, and Mason volunteered to check the western sector alone. He didn't know why. Maybe he couldn't stand the idea of leaving without trying. As he walked deeper into the ruins, he felt the silence growing heavy around him. Even the wind seemed afraid to make noise here. Mason touched the side of his helmet and whispered, "Sector clear so far." No movement. His voice sounded small against the emptiness. Then he stopped. A sound touched his ears, soft, shaky, almost too quiet to notice. It didn't sound like metal falling, or the wind moving through broken walls. It sounded alive. Mason froze and listened again. There it was. A small, weak cry. He turned his head slowly, trying to locate it. The sound came again, a trembling little voice, full of fear and hunger. Mason felt the hair rise on his neck. It wasn't a human voice. It was higher, lighter, almost musical even in its pain. Without thinking, he followed it. He moved carefully between fallen beams and shattered windows. The crying grew a little louder as he stepped toward a half-collapsed shelter. Most of the roof had caved in, and the front wall leaned forward like it was about to fall at any second. Smoke still rose from the ground nearby. Mason pushed aside a broken doorway and stepped inside. His visor light cut through the darkness, and he saw her. A small alien girl sat curled behind a broken support beam. Her legs were thin and shaken. Her clothes were covered in dust. Her skin was a pale silver color, and her eyes were large and glowing softly like blue lanterns. When the light touched her, she covered her face with her hands and let out a scared cry. Mason slowly lowered his weapon. She didn't look dangerous. She didn't even look strong enough to stand. "It's okay," he said gently. "I'm not going to hurt you." The girl peeked between her fingers. Her body trembled harder as she stared at his armor, his helmet, and the human symbol on his shoulder. She had seen this before. Mason could tell from her eyes. He took one small step forward, and she fell to her knees. Her voice cracked as she cried out, "Please, help my little sister. She has not eaten in many days." Mason froze in shock. She was speaking Basic, the universal trade language. Not many alien children could speak it so clearly, but she did. He knelt slowly, lowering himself so he would not look threatening. "Where is your sister?" he asked. The girl pointed with a shaking finger toward a pile of debris in the corner. Mason turned his light and saw a gap between fallen stones. Something small moved inside a weak, fragile movement. "She is trapped," the girl whispered. "She is weak. I cannot free her." Mason nodded. "I'll help." But before he could move, the girl crawled closer and grabbed his armor with desperate hands. Her eyes were filled with terror, guilt, and something else, fear of him. Her voice broke as she said words he never expected to hear. "Take me as your slave. Just save her. Please, I will obey, I will serve. Just save her." Mason felt his heart drop. She wasn't lying. She wasn't acting. She truly believed humans took slaves. Someone must have taught her this fear. But before he could respond, a sudden metallic click echoed from behind him. Mason spun around instantly and raised his rifle. Something had moved outside the shelter, something watching them. The girl gasped and pulled back in panic. Mason's finger tightened on the trigger. The shadows outside shifted, and he wondered if the enemy who destroyed this colony was still here, waiting in the ruins, hunting for survivors. The silent world suddenly felt alive with danger, and Mason realized he wasn't alone on this dead planet. Something was hunting, and now it had found him. Mason kept his rifle pointed at the entrance while the alien girl hid behind him, clutching his armored arm with trembling fingers. The shelter was dark, quiet, and broken, but Mason felt eyes watching them from somewhere beyond the fallen walls. The strange metallic noise he heard did not repeat, but the silence felt heavier now, as if the ruins were holding their breath. He took a slow step forward and scanned the area. Nothing moved. No shadows shifted. no glowing eyes in the dust, but Mason's instincts, built from years of war, whispered that danger was close. Only after a long moment did he lower his weapon slightly and turn back to the girl. She looked at him with terrified blue eyes, waiting for him to shout or strike, as if she expected violence for simply touching him. "It's fine," Mason said softly. "You're safe for now." The girl didn't seem to believe him. She lowered her head and whispered, "I will be a good slave. I will not run. Humans always want slaves." Her voice cracked with fear and exhaustion. Mason felt anger burn inside him, not toward her, but toward whoever put this idea in her mind. "Listen," he said firmly, "I don't want a slave. Humans don't take slaves." She blinked in confusion, as if he had spoken in another language. "But others came," she whispered. "They looked like you. They wore your armor. They took many from our colony. They said humans own us now." Mason felt cold. Human mercenaries, pirates, raiders. They often stole old Earth military armor and used it to scare alien colonies. These bastards caused so much damage across the galaxy, and now this child believed that all humans were monsters. "No," Mason said, "those were not real soldiers. Not people like me." But the girl still watched him with doubt, her small hands clenched tightly. Mason sighed and turned, his attention toward the debris where her little sister was trapped. The child inside was barely moving now. "Time was running out. I need to free her," Mason said. "Can you stay back?" The girl looked at the rubble, then back at Mason. She swallowed hard. For a moment she looked like she wanted to help, but then her face twisted with guilt. "If I stay back," she whispered, "will you still take me? If I obey?" Mason shook his head. "I told you, I don't want you as a slave." The girl's voice broke into a frightened cry. "Then you won't help us. That is the deal. Humans only help if they take." She grabbed his arm again, desperate and shaking. "Please, don't leave. Don't leave us to die." Mason knelt beside her and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, but she flinched like she expected a blow. "I'm not leaving," he said. "I promised I would help your sister, and I will." The girl stared at him for a long moment, struggling to understand him. Her breath was fast and shaky, and her eyes filled with tears. She whispered, "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Mason answered. She looked confused again. This kind of kindness was not normal in her world. He moved toward the rubble and began clearing broken stones with careful, quiet movements. Dust rose into the air. The metal floor creaked under his weight. Each piece he lifted revealed more of the small alien child trapped beneath. The elder sister crawled closer but stayed behind him, as if she believed getting too near would break some rule. "She is only 6 years old," the girl said softly. "She has not spoken since the attack. She is scared all the time." "What's her name?" Mason asked. "Lyra," the girl whispered. "And your name?" The girl hesitated, then answered, "Syrah." Mason nodded. "All right, Syrah. I'm going to pull your sister out now." He pushed aside one final metal panel, and the little girl underneath let out a weak breath. Her silver skin was pale, and her eyes were half open. Mason gently slid his arms under her and lifted her into the air. Syrah gasped and covered her mouth. Lyra, the small girl, didn't respond. She was barely conscious, her limbs limp. Mason set Lyra down carefully on a piece of clean flooring and reached for the emergency nutrient pack clipped to his vest. He opened it and held it to the child's lips. At first, Lyra didn't react. Then, slowly, she opened her mouth. She drank. A small spark of life returned to her eyes. Syrah fell to her knees beside her and sobbed with relief. Thank you. Mason allowed himself a small smile, but then the metallic click came again, this time closer. Mason's smile vanished. He stood up instantly, grabbing his rifle, scanning the shadows outside the shelter. Something moved behind the ruined building across the street, a dark shape, large, slow. Mason narrowed his eyes. Whatever it was, it wasn't friendly. Syrah saw his expression and froze. "They are back," she whispered in terror. Mason didn't answer. He didn't have to. He knew now the colony wasn't empty. The hunters who destroyed this place had returned, and they had found new targets. The sound came again, sharp, metallic, and too close. Mason held his breath and stared through the broken wall of the shelter. Dust drifted across the ruins, but nothing moved. The world felt frozen. Behind him, Syrah held her little sister tightly, her eyes wide with fear. Mason lifted one hand, signaling Sira to stay silent. She nodded quickly and pressed her hand over Lyra's mouth to keep her quiet. The child made a soft whimper, but even that tiny sound felt too loud in this dead place. The noise returned. Not one sound this time, but several small metal taps, claws scraping stone, gears clicking. Mason knew this sound well. He had heard it during the fall of other colonies. These weren't animals. These weren't humans. These were machines. Hunting drones, Mason whispered. Sira's breath caught. He could hear her shaking behind him. Mason clicked the safety off his rifle and stepped to the edge of the shelter. He peeked out carefully, making no noise. In the street beyond the ruins, 3 small drones crawled along the cracked ground. Their thin metal legs tapped like insects. Their red eye lights scanned the area, searching for life, and they were moving closer. Mason pulled back and dropped to one knee. He spoke softly but firmly. "Sira, listen. I need you to stay low. Do not make noise. Do not run unless I tell you." Sira nodded, but tears began to fall as she held her sister tighter. She whispered, "These machines. They took my uncle. They dragged him away." Mason clenched his jaw. He didn't want to hear more. He didn't have time to feel anger. He needed a plan, and fast. The drones were slow but careful. They scanned everything. They would find the shelter in less than a minute. Mason checked his rifle. 1 full battery. To spare cells. Enough to fight, but fighting wasn't the problem. Saving the girls was. He switched to low voice mode on his helmet. "Command, this is Sergeant Mason. I have 2 survivors. Enemy drones active in sector. Request immediate evacuation signal." Static answered him. Then nothing. Mason cursed under his breath. The thick smoke clouds were blocking the comm signals. They were alone. The tapping outside grew louder. Mason made his choice. He stood up and stepped forward. "Stay back," he told the sisters. "Do not move until I tell you." Then he sprinted out of the shelter. The drones reacted instantly. Their red eyes flashed bright, and their metal legs clicked faster as they turned toward him. One drone opened a small compartment and revealed a laser barrel. Mason didn't wait. He fired first. A blue bolt shot from his rifle and hit the first drone dead center. Sparks exploded from its metal frame, and it collapsed with a sharp, broken screech. The other 2 drones charged toward him. Moving faster now, Mason rolled behind a broken wall just as a laser beam sliced through the air where his head had been a second earlier. He popped up, firing again. The bolt hit a drone's leg, snapping it off. The machine crashed to the ground but continued crawling with its remaining limbs. The third drone jumped across the rubble toward him. Mason shot it mid-air. It fell, twitching, its lights flickering and dying. But he wasn't done. The second drone, the one missing a leg, kept moving. Its red eye locked onto the shelter where Sarah and Lyra hid. "No you don't," Mason growled. He charged, smashing the drone with the butt of his rifle. Metal crunched under the impact. Sparks burst from its body. The drone tried to stab his leg with a last desperate motion, but Mason crushed it again, ending it for good. Silence returned. Only the sound of Mason's heavy breathing filled the ruined street. He turned back, toward the shelter. Sarah and Lyra were still there, frozen in fear. When Mason approached, Sira pulled Lyra close, unsure if she should step out. "It's safe," Mason said softly. "For now." Sira stared at the broken drones scattered across the ground. Her voice shook. "You fought them for us?" Mason nodded. "Of course." Sira lowered her head. Something like shame passed over her face. "The soldiers who came before, they did not fight the drones. They worked with them. They took people away to the hunters." Mason felt his stomach twist. "I'm not like them." Sira looked at him for a long moment, studying him as if she needed to see inside his heart. Finally, she whispered, "I believe you." He nodded. "Good. Then we need to move. This place isn't safe. The drones never travel alone." Sira gasped. "More will come." "Yes," Mason said, "and not just drones." He didn't want to say the name of the monsters she feared, the Grax hunters, but he didn't need to. Sira already knew. Mason lifted Lyra into his arms. She was light as air, barely strong enough to wrap her thin fingers around his collar. Sira walked beside him, keeping one hand on Mason's armor, as if she still feared he would vanish and leave them. Her voice was quiet. "Where will we go?" Mason looked toward the mountains in the distance. Smoke still rose from them, but beyond the mountains, according to his map, was an old mining tunnel system. If they reached it, they could hide. "Somewhere safe," he said. Sarah nodded and followed him through the ruins, but Mason didn't tell her the part that scared him most. The drones he destroyed had already sent a signal. The hunters knew someone was alive, and they were coming. Mason led Sarah and Lyra through the ruins, moving fast but silent. The broken city stretched far in every direction, burned towers, shattered homes, old battle scars. Smoke hung in the air like a dark blanket. Every few seconds, Mason checked behind them. The streets were empty, but he knew that wouldn't last. Sarah walked close, her hands shaking, her eyes jumping at every sound. Little Lyra lay quiet in Mason's arms, too weak to speak or cry. Her breath was soft and slow, like a candle trying not to go out. After several minutes, Mason guided them into an old transport garage. The building had half a roof, half a wall, and a full load of dust, but it was quiet and partially hidden, a safe place to rest for a moment. Mason set Lyra on a metal bench. Sarah knelt beside her immediately, touching her cheek and brushing dust from her hair. "She feels cold," Sarah whispered. "She needs more food." "I know," Mason said. He took another nutrient pack from his belt. "Let's try again." He opened the pack and held it to Lyra's lips. At first there was no reaction, but slowly Lyra's eyes fluttered. She took a small sip, then another. Then her hand, tiny and trembling, reached up and touched Mason's glove. Sarah gasped, tears filling her eyes. She never touched anyone since the attack. She was too scared. Mason felt a tightness in his chest. He wasn't expecting the small, simple gesture to hit him so hard, but the child's trust was precious, fragile, something he didn't want to break. When Lyra finished, Mason leaned against the wall for a moment to breathe. The fight with the drones had drained him more than he realized. Sarah watched him quietly. After a moment, she asked, "Why did you save us?" "You had no reason." Mason didn't answer right away. He stared at the broken ceiling, watching sunlight slip through the cracks. Finally, he said, "Because nobody should be left behind. Not humans, not aliens, no one." Sarah lowered her eyes. "That is not what the others said." "What others?" Mason asked gently. Sarah hesitated, hugging her knees. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The humans who came before the attack." Mason's jaw tightened. He had guessed this, but hearing it still made something inside him twist. "They said," Sarah continued, "that our colony belonged to Earth now. They said humans rule over weak races. They said we should obey or be taken." Mason looked down, angry not at Sarah, but at the monsters who used his species name to hurt children. "Those weren't human soldiers," he said firmly. "They were raiders wearing stolen armor. They are criminals. They don't follow any laws. They don't carry any honor. Real humans don't take slaves." Sarah looked up slowly, confusion and fear mixing in her eyes. "But they spoke your language. They had your weapons. How can you be different?" Mason knelt in front of her. "Because humans are not one thing. Some are good, some are terrible. But I am a soldier. I swore to protect the innocent, not to hurt them." Sarah held his gaze for a long moment. Then, in a small voice, she asked, "So, you will not take me?" "No," Mason said. "Never." A single tear rolled down Sarah's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, almost embarrassed. "I did not know humans could be good." Mason gave a small, tired smile. "We try." For the first time, Sarah's shoulders relaxed a little. She gently touched her sister's forehead. Lyra had fallen asleep, but her breathing was steadier now. Mason checked the skies outside the broken wall. Smoke drifted by. "No drones, no hunters. Not yet. We don't have much time," he said. "We need to leave the city. There's an old mining tunnel system north of here. If we reach it, we can hide until I get a signal out." Sarah nodded. "We will follow you." Before they could move, a strange scraping sound echoed from one of the far corners of the garage. Mason tensed instantly and raised his rifle. The sound came again, a long, deep scratch along metal. Not soft, like the drones. Not robotic. This was heavier, wet, alive. Sarah grabbed Mason's arm. "Grax," she whispered. Her voice was shaking. "They are here." Mason stepped forward, his eyes scanning the shadows. A faint smell drifted through the room like rotting plants and old blood. It made his skin crawl. He motioned Sarah to hide behind the transport engine with Lyra. She obeyed silently. Mason moved closer to the dark space. His visor switched to low-light mode, revealing the faint outline of claw marks on the wall. Deep ones, fresh. Then, inside the darkness, something breathed. Slow, heavy, a shape shifted, large, hunched, with long arms that dragged along the floor. Mason froze. The Grax hunter stepped into the light. Its skin was dark gray, its head narrow, its eyes glowing like molten gold. Sharp teeth showed between its curled lips. Its long claws scraped the floor with a sound that made Sarah gasp. Behind him the creature sniffed the air. It smelled Mason, it smelled Sarah, it smelled Lyra, and it smiled. Mason steadied his weapon, heartbeat pounding. The hunters weren't just returning. One was already here, and it had found them. The Grax hunter stepped fully into the broken garage, its golden eyes shining like fire in the smoke-filled air. Its long arms dragged across the metal floor, claws sparking as they scraped the ground. Every slow breath it took echoed through the empty space, deep and hungry. Mason didn't move. He kept his rifle aimed at the creature's head, every muscle ready to fire, but he didn't pull the trigger yet. One wrong shot, and the hunter would leap faster than he could react. Behind him, Sarah crouched with Lyra in her arms. The small girl trembled silently, too weak to cry. Sarah's hands covered Lyra's ears, as if the sound of the hunter, breathing alone, could shatter her. The creature lifted its head and sniffed again. Mason could feel at the moment when the Grax locked onto the scent of the two alien children. Its grin widened, showing rows of serrated teeth. Mason whispered without turning his head, "When I say run, you run." Sarah barely breathed. "Where?" "To the tunnel, straight north." Mason steadied his stance. "Don't look back." Before Sarah could answer, the hunter lunged. Mason fired a burst of blue shots into its chest. The impact staggered the creature, knocking it sideways. It roared, shaking dust from the walls. Mason didn't wait. He spun around and shouted, "Go, now." Sarah lifted Lyra and ran. The hunter sprang at Mason again, claws slicing the air. Mason dodged left, rolled, and shot at its legs. One hit connected, burning a long streak into its thick skin. The creature screeched and slammed its fist down where Mason had been a moment earlier, cracking the metal floor. "Mason," Sarah cried from the exit. "Keep going," he shouted back. He fired again and again, each shot lighting up the dark garage. The hunter moved in wild, powerful bursts, its arms slamming into walls, floor, anything in its path. One strike hit a support beam and rocks crashed down, blocking part of the garage and cutting off their retreat. "Faster, Sarah!" Mason yelled. He turned just in time to see the hunter leap again. It slammed into him with full force, throwing him across the room. He hit the ground hard, his breath knocked out of him. The hunter stalked toward him, claws extended. Mason forced himself up, coughing. He lifted his rifle. The hunter kicked it away. Mason reached for his sidearm, but the creature's massive foot pinned his arm to the floor. Its hot breath washed over him, and its golden eyes narrowed with hunger. It leaned closer, ready to finish him. A tiny voice broke the silence. "Stop." The hunter paused. Sarah stood in the doorway, shaking, holding Lyra tight. Her eyes were full of terror, but she took one step forward anyway. "Please, don't hurt him," she whispered. The hunter turned its head slowly toward her. Its nostrils flared. It smelled weakness, fear, food. "Sarah, run!" Mason shouted, but she didn't move. Her voice broke. "He saved us. Kill me instead. Leave him." Mason's heart dropped. "No, Sarah, don't." The Grax growled and started toward her, and that was the moment Mason made his choice. He grabbed the emergency flare from his belt, activated it, and shoved it directly into the hunter's mouth. A burst of burning red light exploded inside the creature's jaws. The hunter roared in agony, stumbling backward, its eyes flaring wildly. Mason jumped to his feet and grabbed Sarah's arm. "Move!" They sprinted out of the garage, Lyra in Sarah's arms, the hunter screaming behind them with flames spilling from its mouth. The creature wasn't dead, but it was angry. "North," Mason said. "Keep running." The three of them raced through the ruined streets. The sky shook with noise, more drones waking, more monsters answering the hunter's call. They reached the edge of the mountains, just as the ground trembled behind them. The hunter was coming. Mason spotted the mining tunnel entrance, half collapsed, but still open. He pushed Sarah and Lyra inside. "Go, hurry." Sarah stopped. Her eyes were wet. "You're coming with us, right?" Mason looked back. The hunter was climbing the slope on all fours, fast, furious, unstoppable. More drones crawled from the streets behind it, and he knew, if he went inside, the creature would follow. It would trap them, kill them all. He knelt and touched Lyra's head gently. Then he placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "You two live," he said quietly. Sarah's voice cracked. "No, no." "You promised." "I promised to save her," Mason said softly. "And I will." Sidra shook her head desperately. "We won't leave." Mason pushed them both inside the tunnel and slammed the metal grate closed. He locked it from the outside. Sidra screamed. "Mason, please, don't." Lyra reached through the bars with her weak little hand, tears running down her dusty cheeks. Mason smiled a tired, sad smile. "Humans don't take slaves," he whispered. "We save them." Then he turned as the hunter reached the top of the slope, roaring in rage, its claws ready to tear him apart. Mason raised his weapon, stood tall, and faced the beast head-on. The last thing Sarah saw, through her tears, was Mason running into battle, alone, brave, unbroken. The last thing she heard was his voice echoing through the mountains. For Earth, and for them. And then the tunnel collapsed behind her, sealing her away, sealing him outside. A hero against the darkness, a human who proved what humanity truly meant.